Selecting HR Software, Part 1. Today we'll be covering identifying what's needed in the way of HR software, what components we need in that software to make it work for us. We'll also be covering the two main parts of our preparation before we find our HR software, which will be documenting all our key processes and gathering together the organizational rules. And finally, we'll be looking at the best ways of finding HR software suppliers. Today's presenters are HR technology. It's probably going to be one of the most important investment decisions that we as HR professionals are ever going to be involved in. So it stands to reason that in order to get the right software, we need to make the right sort of preparation, and therefore our approach to this whole question has got to be very well structured, well put together, and to be sound as well. A little while back, I propounded what I call the 3 laws of HR tech, which actually place the responsibility for HR systems squarely on the shoulders of HR. It means that HR would take responsibility for selecting it, would also take responsibility for running it, for the data that's in the system, and also making sure it's available to all those people in the organization who actually need it. So here we are. So the first step is identifying what's needed. And it does sound easy. You seem to think, oh, well, we need to be able to do this, that, and the other. But actually, we need to look very carefully at the elements that we need in the system to make it work. So for that, we need to know what we want the software to do, how it's going to be involved in our various activities. We need to know what problems, and if you like, pain points, we call them, that this software is going to try and solve or smooth away. And we need to know the way that it's going to work for you. And when I say that, for instance, it does mean, for instance, because software has an absence module, it doesn't mean that that module is going to work in the way that you want it to. So we need to take a great piece of care in selecting the right one. Now, these are the typical functions of features, elements of HR software. HR software is normally deployed with the following modules: performance, time and attendance, training, administration, absence, applicant tracking, to deal with all your recruitment. The payroll is often integrated with this. And, there are a host of other modules as well, but these are really the main ones. And then if we turn to what we call the big features, the things that really make that engine work for you, there's workflow, which basically moves documents around the system for you. It means you don't have to run from one place to another gathering signatures. Automated actions or notifications. That's where you'll get an email or an SMS when there's been some change in data, and that will go to any selected people who need to know about that change so that they can take action. Organization charting, which is fairly self-evident, and self-service. Self-service enables those who are authorized to access the system to get into it, to change things or view things and so on. So, documenting the key processes. The reasons behind doing this are manifold. There's a lot of benefits. First of all, it will tell you about any modifications you need to know to make in the process itself. Very often we use processes we've been using for years. And this is a very good time to look at those, deconstruct them, look at the steps, and then put them back together and build a process map. Because this will be very useful in helping you to make comparisons between vendors. It will also enable you to develop test scenarios for when your product demonstrations are being run. And at the end of it all, when your software is about to be configured by the selected software's consultant, they've got a document that they can follow to reproduce that in the software. And looking at some of the main processes, if you look at some of those key processes, starters, leavers, changes, there could be changes in salary, department, position, and so on. The recruitment, running your recruitment from the very start till when your candidate starts, and the onboarding as well, which you'll see down there in boarding and induction. Performance management, setting objectives, measuring the objectives and process. Learning and development, how to develop your staff, if you know what they need to be developed for. Absence processes, what happens when somebody's sick, how many hands does this information have to pass through for approval or for information. Exit interviews, obviously when you've got your leavers, you need to have a process for that. And the employee relations, that whole piece about disciplinary, appeal, grievance. So those all need to be mapped out in some detail so that you understand each step in the process. Now, organizational rules, if you like, are the rules that make the organization tick, and they can vary from a whole range of things. When you look at the very basics, the organizational structure, you'll need a complete picture of that structure and the positions within that hierarchy, if you like. And you need those position and departmental hierarchies in detail, right down to every member of staff, otherwise your self-service and notifications may not work. The rules are things like overtime rates, working hours, holiday entitlements, are there benefits accruing to any particular post, and so on. There's a whole raft of them. Normally they're not kept in one place in an organization. Some may be in the handbook, some may be sitting in a file somewhere in the payroll department. You need to gather all those together and put them into one file, because down the line, when your software has been selected, you're going to need one for you, one for your project manager, and one for the vendor's project manager, so they can sit down and work on that together. Now, how do we find vendors? Right, some of the best sources are software exhibitions. So typically the CIPD HR Software Show is probably the biggest and most representative in the UK. Industry journals such as People Management, Personnel Today, the Global Payroll Association magazine. Dedicated websites such as HR Comparison. Your online desk research, although that can be a little haphazard because you won't find them all at all. A lot of them you'll find only are those which are registered high in the Google search engine. Or at the end there, I put contractor specialist. That could be somebody like me. They actually could save you quite a bit of time. But those are the main sources of getting that information. If you're going to go to a software exhibition beforehand, have a look at the exhibitor website, see who of those vendors is exhibiting. And this is important to make the most of your time. If you've identified some vendors you'd like to see, beforehand book an appointment, perhaps not more than an hour, where you can sit with them and look at what the vendor has to show you. It would be very helpful for a vendor to send a couple of scenarios for vendors to demonstrate to you in real time. You can ask for some general information about price and implementation time, and by all means produce a score sheet based on the points you want to see. So if they're unable to satisfy you on some points, they get nothing. If they fully satisfy you that this will actually work for you, they get 10 points or something like that. What you need to look for on the offers that you get from the vendors are they offering all the modules and features you need? Are they serving the type of organizational size that you are? You can use some sites such as HR Comparison where you can actually compare between vendors up to 5 at a time. Are they serving the countries or the territories that you're operating in? And do they offer the product deployment that you're looking for? So if you particularly want it in-house, they need to be able to give you that option. Although you'll probably find from my researches, over the last couple of years, 99.9% of my requests have been for online, web-enabled HR software. So in summary, make sure that your preparation is thorough. Do not skip this phase. All the hard work that you put in at the beginning will really pay dividends as you go on through in your search. So don't try to short circuit it. I mean, I see people write things in places like LinkedIn saying, can anybody recommend a piece of HR software? Frankly, that's not the way to go about it. I'm afraid you have to put in those hard yards, that preparation and so on. But it's nice to know that all the effort you put in at the end of the day will ensure that you minimize the chances of choosing the wrong thing.